Hi folks, so today is Thursday and I want to share a video with you today because I leave on a Saturday for a week-long video shoot in China that I'm pretty excited about, and I can't wait to bring back a lot of footage and some tips from that trip. So this video, my wife and I were very lucky this weekend because our oldest son Marshall visited us from San Francisco. And we hadn't seen him in a while, and it was just wonderful to see him. Now, what does this have to do with filmmaking and video? Well, Marshall is an audio professional, and Marshall sat down with me and gave me some excellent tips, and I know that these tips are going to be helpful to you as well. So my vlogging setup consists of a Rode NTG1 microphone plugged into a Zoom H4n, and that is plugged into my camera, which is the Canon 5D Mark IV. So while this video touches mainly on that setup, there are some very valuable tips and tricks that you need to know in Premiere Pro and with your camera settings to get the best quality audio that you can get. So let's take a look.
All right, so right now what I'm doing is when I'm checking the audio level, I'm talking normally and I can already tell that the Zoom is way too hot because this is a pretty quiet speaking voice and you're already at like 75%. So that's way too hot because, if I talk loudly, it's immediately gonna clip. So I'm gonna turn down the audio on here. Check 1 2 1 2. It's about 30 now, and it was at like 72 before. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay, yeah, cool. This is good. So like when I'm talking, it kind of peaks at about halfway. So if I say something loud, it still only kind of hits it. So what's happening right here is the preamp inside your camera is absolutely terrible. The preamp inside the Zoom is great. Now that we have the volume level set at a good place on the Zoom, we need to look at the camera and start adjusting the audio there. Cool, what we've changed is we've got the mic right here out of frame. And the audio level before was too hot on the Zoom so that when you were talking loudly, it was overdriving the preamp and kind of distorting the sound. And so that way by the time it actually gets to the camera, it's already lost. You've already got that kind of harsh quality. And so what happens is when you're kind of doing your regular voice talking, you want it to be kind of peaking around maybe 40 or 50%. And then when you hit your kind of, if you have a few louder words like along the way, you want that to peak up maybe 60%. So on the loud ones, you want it to peak probably around -12, because what you want is you want headroom, but not too much headroom. Because if you have too little headroom, then that means you're maxing out the preamp and you're going to get some distortion in there. But if you have too much headroom, like if it's too quiet and you have to turn it up too much, then when you turn it up, you're also going to be turning up the noise that's kind of like crackling along underneath this stuff. And so you kind of want to find this balance to where like you can turn it up a little bit to where you get the voice to be nice and loud and present, but you're not going to also bring up the noise from either of the preamps.
For in this case, so what we did was Marshall had me lower the level of the camera audio. You'll notice that there are 4 different little bars. We lowered the level so it was just a little to the right of the first bar, which is very much lower than where I had it, which was basically in the middle, which was why I was getting all of that clipping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this setup should be good to go. So here, let's do a test right now. This
is the new vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall's going to offer some professional advice on how I can further improve the audio of my videos. Okay,
cool. So we've brought this audio clip in straight from the camera, and the first thing you can see when comparing it to the old clip, which here I'll play the old clip.
Do what you can to inspire others as others have inspired you.
And this is really bad quality. You can hear that it clipped on the input or overdrived on the input, especially on Inspire.
Inspire others.
It's just, it sounds kind of tinny and it's bad. And so the reason for that was the audio level on the Zoom was too hot. So that when you were speaking with really loud words, then it would kind of overdrive the preamp. And then also I think your audio level on the camera was too high as well, so when a hot signal would come through, the camera would add its own really bad quality color. So what we're going to do instead is, for this clip, I turned down the level on the Zoom so that kind of average, like medium quiet talking voice was peaking at around maybe like 40 to 50%. And then if there was like a loud word here and there, it would peak at maybe like 60 or 70%. But usually like kind of idling around 50% is a really good middle ground. And it's more important, as a general rule, it's more important to pay attention to the actual audio meter and where it's peaking instead of looking at, oh, well, what's my input level? What's the number at? Because the numbers don't really matter. Trust your ear, firstly, And then secondly, trust the audio meters. So right here we have this clip, and the first thing you're going to notice is it's a lot quieter.
This is the new vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro.
So I'm in the audio panel up here. So this panel over here on the right side, Essential Sound, is what we're going to be working on. So yeah, first thing I did was just turn up the overall volume by about 6 decibels, because that's as loud as it lets us go there, and that's all we really need. So the parts of the Essential Sound panel that I think are going to be most relevant here are this dynamic slider, which is basically, it's a compressor, except I like how they've distilled the whole thing down into just a single slider for all the settings that you could possibly need. It makes it really straightforward, especially for people who don't want to fiddle with all the different options that a compressor has. So first thing I'll do is check dynamics and bring this down to 0. Technique I like to use when mixing audio is I start, if I'm mixing in an effect, I'll start all the way at 0, and then I'll just play the audio and I'll slowly slide up until I can actually hear the effect that it's having, and then I dial it back just a touch. So I'm going to do that with this.
This is the new vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall's going to offer some professional advice on how I can further improve the audio of.
Okay, all right, that's already sounding a lot better. A little more professional. It's keeping your louder moments in check, and it's keeping it's bringing your quieter moments up to kind of gently squish everything into a smaller dynamic range. So next, I'm going to turn on the EQ, and it's already on subtle boost male. And I think that this is basically just an EQ boost, probably around 2.5K. But I'm going to do the exact same thing again. You can see here. It's just more or less. So I'm going to do the same thing here and slowly slide up until I can hear it, and then dial it back a touch.
Vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall's going to offer some professional advice on how.
Okay, I like that. So here, I'll turn it all the way up so you can hear, and then I'll just toggle on and off so you can hear. It's adding kind of a bright, tinny quality to it, which a little bit of is good. It allows your voice to kind of cut through any other sounds that might be happening and like sound very up close and present, but too much and it'll sound like you're coming through an old telephone. So I'll just do with all the way and then without.
Vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall's going to
see what I mean is that this is way too much. So I'm going to start with this all the way at 0. So a little bit of this is going to add clarity to your voice, so it's easier to actually hear what you're saying, but too much and it'll sound bad.
This is the new vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall.
That's good. And now I'm just going to look at the overall audio level to see if in this last clip volume, if I want to add or subtract anything.
Setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro, and we're going to look and see how it sounds, and Marshall's going to offer some.
I think that's cool. We don't need to add or take anything away there. Now I know that there's this clap at the end
of my videos.
Okay, so that clipped. The clap clipped. So what we're going to do now is just add a hard limiter to the very end of your signal flow. After we've done all the processing and we know that everything is pretty much in a good area, if there are still just a few little outlier moments, like, oh, it just clips a little bit here, like I think it clipped a tiny bit right here, and then it clips a little bit on the clap. And so just at the very end, throw a hard limiter on, and that'll just kind of take care of that. So now you'll see that the clap does not clip.
Can further improve the audio of my videos. Okay.
See? And now we're done. And so now here is the first clip with the old too loud audio settings.
Do what you can to inspire others as others have inspired you.
And this is after with the new settings and better processing.
This is the new vlogging setup. When Marshall has adjusted all of my audio settings, we are going to import this into Premiere Pro. All right, I want you to explain one thing that you had said to me off camera. And that is, I had mentioned to you that it looked like the audio was peaking a little into the orange and red. And you had said that that seems to be an issue with Premiere Pro.
Right. Okay, so I don't know if this is, if I would call it an issue with Premiere Pro. It's just, there's kind of a misleading thing about audio meters in general, is there's a bunch of different algorithms and software that can go into determining how it works, and also different manufacturers have different settings as to where it starts to turn yellow and where it starts to turn orange and things like that, to where there's some differentiation between programs. So I primarily do audio work in Pro Tools, and so I really trust those audio meters there. And so In general, I've noticed that the audio meters in Premiere tend to make it look like your audio is a lot hotter than it is. I wonder if that's because kind of broadcast standards, like if you're producing media for film or TV, their standards are like that you mix it to a lot lower. And so maybe it's engineered to look like it's louder than it is to kind of keep people working in that lower volume range. But if you're doing if you're producing content for the web like YouTube, you don't want to be mastering to like that, what is it, like -16 LUFS broadcast standard. You're gonna wanna mix it a little bit higher. So don't put too much stock into whether it's looking red or orange or whatever. Pay more attention to, is it clipping and does it sound good?
So what is the holy grail that you never want it to do? You never want it to touch 0.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tempting to, if you bring audio into your program, it's really tempting to, the first thing to do is throw a limiter on it so it's no longer clipping, but that's terrible. That's such a bad thing to do. So if you're doing any kind of audio mixing and audio sweetening with a limiter already on, then you're not actually gonna be hearing the most high quality version, because you're gonna like start cranking in, oh, let me make this louder, let me make this louder. Oh, cool, we're not clipping, we can make it louder. But what you're doing is you're just gonna end up pushing that limiter harder and harder so that the limiter starts squashing more and more of it. And then eventually you're gonna get to a point where you realize, this sounds really bad and I can't quite put my finger on why. So the good way to avoid that is never mix with a limiter on. Always wait until it's at the very end and you know you're happy with the way it sounds. And then just as kind of like a final safety measure, throw a limiter at the very end of the signal flow, and then all that does is, for 99% of the time, the limiter is not going to do anything. But then if you have just one little moment, like where you clapped at the end of the video, it'll just catch those last things before it actually hits the mixer.
So again, I think the major point that Marshall stressed is it is crucial that every time you start a new audio recording, video recording, you test and adjust the audio levels, either in your camera or in your camera and in your preamp, which in my case was the Zoom H4n. So if you're using an on-camera mic, like say the Rode VideoMic Pro, you always want to make sure that before you start shooting, you check the audio levels inside the camera and also on your microphone itself. Some of them have a dial that you can turn it up or down. Mine has a -10 decibels or +10 decibels. So always check the levels. Very important that the levels, the meter does not go much beyond the midway point. So I want to thank Marshall for taking the time to share this valuable insight. I hope you like this video. If you did, I hope that you'll be inspired to subscribe, and I will see you next time.